Link TV, connecting you to the world. Link TV is viewer supported. Watch more at linktv.org.
Link TV presents Mosaic World News from the Middle East. Here are today's top stories.
Iraqi Prime Minister denies government involvement in Allawi assassination plot. 6 NATO troops killed in Afghanistan. And Israel launches spy satellite. Mosaic World News from the Middle East begins now.
The Israeli Defense Ministry said that it has launched a military spy satellite aimed at monitoring the activities of the Iranian nuclear program. Our correspondent in Jerusalem, Ilyas Karam, reports.
عيون إسرائيلية جديدة انطلقت إلى الفضاء.
A new set of Israeli eyes, dubbed OFEC-9, were launched into orbit from the Palmachim air base off the Mediterranean coast. Reaching an altitude of 300 kilometers minutes after its launch, the new Israeli spy satellite successfully reached its planned orbit and started to transmit its first signals. Over the next 3 days, the satellite is expected to transmit its first images from above the Middle East to a special Israeli air base on the ground. Unlike all satellite launches in the world, Israel launches its satellites towards the west, or in a counterclockwise direction. This is done in order to prevent them from falling over Arab countries in case of technical difficulties, in addition to keeping them over the Middle East region for an additional hour. The new satellite, which is the product of an Israeli military institution, is equipped with a large camera capable of capturing high-quality images of objects, measuring less than 50 centimeters at an altitude of 600 kilometers. The OFEC-9 will join other Israeli spy satellites orbiting over the Middle East. The OFEC-9 will replace its sister satellite, OFEC-5, which is expected to retire in a year. The successful launch of the OFEC-9 into orbit has brought joy to the Israelis. Israeli Minister of Defense Ehud Barak described the launch as a great achievement by a small country such as the State of Israel. The new spy satellite will advance Israel's intelligence capability and give it military superiority over its neighbors. The satellite is capable of conducting surveillance and monitoring the activities of Iran's nuclear facilities. The OFEC-9 will also increase Israel's exceptional and technological capabilities in the region, especially encountering Iran and Syria. While Israel contends that the launch of its new spy satellite has nothing to do with any military developments in the region, Israel is undergoing training on the shelling of Iranian nuclear facilities. Aside from its offensive capabilities, Israel is working on advancing its defensive capabilities as well. Israel has successfully test-fired its Patriot and Arrowhead missiles, which are capable of intercepting and destroying ballistic missiles in the air. Israel also built a series of U.S. radar systems in the Negev desert, doubling the capabilities of its early warning systems.
كما نصبت أجهزة رادار أمريكية في صحراء النقب تضاعف من قدرات الإنذار المبكر لديها.
A new set of Israeli eyes are gazing in orbit. According to knowledgeable sources, the new spy satellite will advance Israel's security and military capabilities. Will Arab spy satellites one day follow the footsteps of their Israeli counterparts? Ilyas Karam, Al Jazeera, West Jerusalem.
Quartet Middle East envoy Tony Blair called for the immediate release of abducted IDF soldier Gilad Shalit from Hamas captivity without preconditions. He also dismissed any future aid flotillas as superfluous, saying that all aid to Gaza can be delivered by way of the Israeli land crossings during a fact-finding mission at the Kerem Shalom crossing into Gaza earlier today. We get more now from IBA's Aaron Viner.
Israel's lifting the land blockade on Gaza now permits entry into the Hamas-controlled territory of all items other than those explicitly banned, which includes weapons and war materials. Quartet Middle East envoy Tony Blair, who played a central role in working to reverse Israel's 3-year policy of restricting civilian goods, praised the cabinet decision. Blair also cited Israel's security concerns as genuine cause for the continued naval blockade of the Strip and blasted efforts to breach it. Operation of the existing crossings into Gaza has been expanded, and dozens of trucks today continue to transport supplies into the Strip in accordance with the new measures.
Following the government decision to liberalize the system by which items will allow into the Gaza Strip, the coordinator of government activities in the territories has started implementing some of the measures, including expanding the operation of the existing crossings. For example, increasing the capacity of Kerem Shalom crossing by 30% as a first stage, so that 120 truckloads will be entered on a daily basis.
Under the new system, nearly any non-military items can enter Gaza freely. Construction materials for projects approved by the Palestinian Authority, such as housing and schools, are also now permitted as long as the projects are under international supervision. Blair today expressed his hope that Israel will undertake additional measures to ease the land blockade of Gaza within the next 2 weeks.
I wanted to come down to Kerem Shalom to see this firsthand, and again, let me thank General Dangot and his team for the work they're doing here, and let's hope if we get this really moving as it is now, in the next few weeks we'll get a significant change, not just in the conditions of people in Gaza, but provide a better and good context for the politics of the whole situation.
This is Erin Viner for IBA News.
Tony Blair believes that the lifting of the land blockade is an important step forward, both for Israel and the people of Gaza. He was speaking to Israel Television's Yaakov Achimeir.
I think the single most important thing for us is to get these indirect negotiations into direct negotiations, as Israel wants to see, to get progress continuing to move ahead on the West Bank, where there's economic growth rates of about 10% at the moment. The Palestinians are doing far more on security and building the institutions for statehood. And the thing about Gaza is that if Gaza is, at least the people in Gaza are getting access to the items they need for daily life, there's much less of a chance that Gaza can be used to obstruct the rest of that progress. So that's really why I think Gaza both matters, not just for the people there, that's the primary concern, but also for the wider process for peace.
But you know, Mr. Blair, the type of regime which exists in Gaza, they don't recognize Israel, and the Hamas covenant is very, very difficult.
Absolutely. But part of the difficulty with the system that was existing is that for Hamas in Gaza, Hamas were able to smuggle stuff through the tunnels from the Egyptian side into Gaza. They had a complete grip on that smuggling, if you like, of items into Gaza. Far better to have items come in through legitimate crossings where they can be properly checked, and that's what we're trying to bring about.
Mr. Blair, what about future flotillas which will try to reach the Gaza Strip?
Well, I think we've now got a position that the government of Israel can accept, the international community can accept, which is to say weapons and arms are not coming into Gaza, items for normal daily life can come into Gaza. And in those circumstances, when we've got that sensible distinction in our minds, then there is no need for stuff to come in by the sea. It can come in through the normal crossings, or if it comes in by sea, it can come to the port at Ashdod and then be checked.
Do you think, Mr. Blair, that the Israeli Navy will be able to continue to inspect vessels which will try to reach the Gaza Strip?
But I think you've got far less chance of people feeling that they've got to mount these flotillas if there is a different and better way of bringing stuff into Gaza. Now, there's one other thing I should say, incidentally, which is I think the present situation would also be helped enormously if Hamas would release Gilad Shalit. He's now coming up to 4 years in captivity. It's deeply inhumane what has happened to him. He's still not allowed international Red Cross visits, for example, which is a normal part of the international conventions. The Israeli government, as you know, are prepared to release large numbers of Palestinian prisoners. I think this is also a test for Hamas. You know, are they prepared now to get behind a different context for Gaza and actually help move this situation forward in a way that's constructive.
Firas Hatum has a special report on his trip from the Rafah crossing through the Erez crossing and into the Gaza Strip.
From Cairo to Arish, then from Arish to Rafah. As we approached the Gaza Strip, both our excitement and concerns were increased. Even though the Egyptian authorities opened the crossing and allowed journalists to enter Gaza through it, we were still very doubtful after arriving, especially when we saw disappointed people returning home.
I've been here for 4 days. This is the 5th day. I have a Jordanian passport, but for the last 2 years, I haven't had an ID. They won't let me go in without an ID. I'm 70 years old. Where should I go? We've been tossed out on the street for the last 4 days.
My husband is Palestinian. I was only going to visit for a few days and return.
Are you going to keep on waiting?
Yes, of course I'm going to wait until they let me in. I've been waiting for a few days at this crossing point.
A short moment of waiting has turned into a long wait. After waiting for an hour, good news finally came, and we were granted the permit to enter. We went through the Egyptian entrance, and a few seconds later we set foot on Gaza. The one thing that greets you upon arriving in Gaza is destroyed buildings. This is one of the scenes left by Israel's latest aggression on Gaza. The barbed wire confirms that we are in an area that is under multiple sieges. We are now in the Gaza Strip. We are now in Palestine. You don't need much time to notice the indications of poverty in Gaza. Most shops went out of business and closed down, while others are still struggling to maintain a livelihood for their owners. Unemployment has become the profession of many young people, while some others have taken up digging tunnels. How's your life in Gaza?
People can't even eat here. Life is paralyzed.
Do you dream about leaving this place?
Every night.
Where would you like to go?
Any country, as long as I leave Gaza.
The trip from the crossing point to central Gaza does not take more than 30 minutes. The green flags that greet you truthfully denote this area's political stance, while passerbys wonder what those who are raising these flags are going to do for them. Would you like to leave?
Yes, there is no way to make a living here. If there is a chance of making a living somewhere else, then we will leave. We can't even marry our children and provide them with housing.
We're accustomed to this atmosphere and we'll stay here. It's impossible to leave home for somewhere else.
Regardless of the country?
Yes, any country. We won't leave.
And regardless of the difficult situation here?
Even if it gets worse, we're not leaving.
It took 30 minutes from Rafah to central Gaza, and another 30 minutes from central Gaza to the Erez crossing that isolates the Strip from the 1948 territories. Palestinians are waiting at the Erez crossing for their relatives. The Israeli authorities have granted them the honor of allowing them to enter the land that once belonged to them. Some of them came back alive, and some came back in body bags, just like this child. Decades have passed since the negotiations began alongside the resistance. The negotiations have not been successful, and the resistance does not seem to be effective. This is the tragedy for the people here, and people believe that a borderline which both starts and ends with walls is not the border of a country, but the border of a prison. Now Gaza has indeed become the biggest prison in the world. From in front of the Erez crossing, also known as Beit al-Hanun crossing, Firas Hatum, New TV.
U.S. President Barack Obama has fired his top commander in Afghanistan. General Stanley McChrystal was fired a day after he criticized White House officials in a magazine interview. McChrystal also indirectly criticized Obama, calling him, quote, uncomfortable and intimidated. Obama summoned McChrystal to Washington to hear his explanation about his disparaging remarks. Obama has now appointed General David Petraeus to lead the war in Afghanistan.
At least 6 foreign troops have been killed in separate incidents in Afghanistan. NATO says 1 soldier was killed in a bomb attack in the western region of the war-torn country. His nationality has not been revealed. In the south, 4 soldiers, 2 Americans and 2 British, were killed in bomb attacks and small arms fire. The 5th soldier is said to be an Italian national. This as the U.S. has warned that casualties will likely soar as foreign troops continue to flood the war-torn country.
Well, the leader of Iran's Islamic Revolution, Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei, says global imperialism is desperate when it comes to facing the Islamic world. Ayatollah Khamenei says imperialist plots in the Middle East have failed. That's why they're now doing whatever they can against the Islamic Republic. He says that's because Iran is now the main symbol of Islamic anti-imperialist movements. Ayatollah Khamenei dismissed the West's moves in approving resolutions against Iran over its peaceful nuclear program. He also slammed what he called the West's unrealistic exaggeration of its anti-Iran sanctions. The leader reiterated that military threats of the arrogant powers prove their weakness in the face of the Muslim world. The leader of the Islamic Revolution also touched on the rising hatred toward the U.S. and Israel. Ayatollah Khamenei says even inside America today, there's rising fury at the powerful presence of the Zionist lobby there.
The foreign ministers of Iran, Brazil and Turkey have agreed to hold a trilateral meeting on the Tehran nuclear declaration. Brazil's foreign minister, Celso Amorim, made the announcement in a telephone conversation with his Iranian counterpart, Manouchehr Moteki. Amorim also described the latest UN Security Council resolution against Iran as an inappropriate move. Under the Tehran declaration, Iran will send part of its low-enriched uranium to Turkey in return for reactor fuel. Turkey and Brazil voted no to the Security Council resolution against Tehran.
Elsewhere, Swedish dock workers have begun a week-long protest against Israel's siege of Gaza and its deadly attack on an aid flotilla.
The union members say the dockers will not handle Israeli goods and ships for the next 7 days.
I think that our union reacts in the same way as many people do. We have seen that this blockade has been running for more than 3 years now. 1/2 of the 1.5 million people living in Gaza are children, and we have to take action now. This is our contribution. This is what we can do.
The 3 state-owned companies operating the port have also agreed not to interfere with the boycott. It's difficult to estimate the volume of goods affected. Gothenburg is the largest port in Scandinavia, handling more than 800,000 containers each year. This is a string of anti-Israel protests in recent weeks. Tel Aviv has come under international condemnation over its attack on the Gaza-bound aid flotilla in May. The attack left 9 activists dead and several others missing. The UN Relief and Works Agency, also known as the UNRWA, has called for immediate funding to deal with the refugee crisis in the Middle East.
Indeed, now that plea comes as the cash-strapped organization continues to cut back on aid and services. UNRWA Commissioner General Filippo Grandi says the agency is short of over $100 million to meet the basic needs of refugees. Grandi was speaking during his visit to Lebanon. He said that UNRWA is also facing a lack of fund to rebuild the Nahr al-Bared refugee camp. He added that only half of the fund could be secured for the camp that was destroyed partly in 2007. The UNRWA chief says the global economic crisis has hit the organization hard as donors are slashing aid to deal with their own debt. European donors constitute more than 60% of the funding.
In this episode, we will be hosting Fawzia Kofi, a member of the Afghan Parliament and Secretary General of the Afghan Legislative Council. She is also a human rights activist. Ms. Fawzia is from the province of Badakhshan in northern Afghanistan. We will talk with her about the political and social situation in these provinces, especially after the Taliban took control of Nuristan province. Political observers believe that this is a signal of what they refer to as the sprawl of the Taliban to the northern part of the country. Ms. Fawzia, we welcome you on Russia Today. Let us start by talking about the security and political situation in the northern part of the country. You are from the northern province of Badakhshan. How do you evaluate the situation, especially in light of the new reports that indicate that the Taliban has been successful in expanding its presence to the northern states?
باتت ناجحة في الفترة الأخيرة في الزحف تجاه هذه الولايات لا سيما عندما
Recently, the Taliban took control of the province of Nuristan. Also, there are talks that the Taliban is advancing to the north. How is the situation in the country?
Well, the north is relatively quiet and supports the government. However, for the last few months, the disturbance has extended to the northern and northeastern part of the country. The decrease in the security is due to actions taken by the Islamic Party, which has bases in the northern areas, especially in the region of Kunduz, Baghlan, and some districts in Badakhshan as well. This has paved the way for the Taliban to interfere in these regions. In addition, some local Taliban members have some connections to local residents in the area. The north is considered to be a very strategic area, not only by the Taliban, but also by others, because this region is very close to Central Asian states. For example, the region of Badakhshan shares a border with both Pakistan and China. Due to the strategic location of this region, the Taliban is trying to have influence over it by infiltrating through the regions of Nuristan and Kunar. The north has joint borders with 4 countries including Tajikistan, China, and Pakistan. This will enable the Taliban to control other regions in the area, such as Hiwar and Kunduz. This would enable it to secure its weapons supply line. This explains why they are trying to cause instability in these areas. We must do everything possible in a transparent way to educate the public and bring security to these areas.
Outgoing Iraqi Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki acknowledged that there has been a plot to assassinate the leader of the Iraqi alliance, Iyad Allawi, whose slate won the elections. In the past 3 days, al-Maliki's government has denied and downplayed Allawi's allegations. However, al-Maliki made a statement and acknowledged that there was a plot to assassinate Allawi. Al-Maliki said that he informed the Defense Ministry, which in turn advised Allawi of the plot.
The government will not gain in any way from such a plot. If there's any evidence of the government's involvement or the involvement of any state officials, I hope someone will bring it to my attention. However, this is a general case and we will treat it as such. We were informed of the plot by the Ministry of Defense on June 18th. On June 19th, government officials issued a series of statements and conducted televised interviews. The government has taken measures to provide security and protection to our brother, Dr. Iyad Allawi. As part of these measures, we issued a ban on the landing of private jets in military airports. I think this is a normal operating procedure. It's unacceptable for a private or a civilian airplane to land in a military airport, especially considering that we may not know the identities of some of those on board. Our brother, Dr. Iyad Allawi, is not the only one who may be targeted. I have never used the military airport to leave or enter the country. This also goes for His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Iraq.
I was hoping that Iraqi officials would be the ones to warn me of the plot, but the warning was issued by the multinational forces. I got a letter from them saying that there's a plot against me. Anyone who wants to see this letter is welcome to do so. The American Occupation Army acknowledged that one of their soldiers was killed in an accident, but claimed that it was non-combat related. The incident took place near the city of Tikrit, near the center of the Salah al-Din province. This comes as resistance fighters continue to attack occupation forces, causing heavy material and human losses.
The courageous Iraqi resistance continues its painful attacks against the American occupation, proving to everyone that it is still on the same path of resistance and will remain on that path until the occupier leaves the land of the two rivers. The second 100-day campaign continues and is being carried out by Salah al-Din al-Ayyubi brigades, which is part of the Islamic Front of the Iraqi resistance. On the 21st day, the brigades declared responsibility for the bombing of the al-Bakr air base in the city of Salah al-Din with a rocket. The hit was direct and effective. On the 22nd day of the campaign, 3 mortar shells with a 120mm caliber were launched toward the al-Bakr air base as well. On the 23rd day of the campaign, the brigades of Salah al-Din destroyed a large cargo truck that belongs to the American occupation by detonating an explosive device in northern Baghdad. On the 24th day of the second 100-day campaign, mortar shells were launched against the American base in northern Baghdad. On the 25th day of the campaign, 2 mortar shells were launched against an American occupation base in northern Baghdad.
The views expressed on Mosaic are from contributing broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible from support of viewers like you. Thank you. Watch Mosaic World News online. Stay up to date with breaking news. Read our blog. Get transcripts of past shows and more at linktv.org/mosaic.
This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. network dedicated to global and national news, uncompromising documentaries, and diverse cultural programs, programs which connect you to the world.